Good morning. I'd like to call to order our Act 279 Working Group informational briefing for Monday, December 1st. It is 10:06 a.m. and we're currently in room 309, and we're also streaming live on YouTube. We members here today. We have Representative Keela here today, Representative Martin. We have Representative Poipoi, I believe, on Zoom from the Island of Molokai, and we may have other members coming in throughout the info briefing. We just have a single item on our agenda, which is the info briefing from the department today. Before we dive into that, just a quick primer or background on why we're here today. Pursuant to House Resolution 10 in 2023 and HR 147 in 2025, the legislature established the Act 279 Working Group to provide ongoing oversight of the DHL execution of the $600 million appropriated under Act 279. That historic appropriation in 2022 was intended to significantly reduce the homestead waitlist, and the House recognized the need for structured legislative monitoring as these funds are deployed. Since its formation, the working group has convened numerous public meetings to receive updates from DHL on expenditures, project development, and progress towards meeting the goals of Act 279. Our role as a committee is to ensure transparency, identify any issues that may warrant legislative action, and keep both the legislature and the public informed. As we approach the conclusion of our work, we are responsible for submitting a progress report to the House prior to the 2026 regular session and a final report prior to the 2027 regular session. Today's presentation from DHL will help us complete that mandate. And I really want to thank the department for being here, Chair Watson, Kawani Pranda, others from the department who are here today. Also members of the working group who have been engaged throughout this process. Also want to thank the previous chairs of the working group. Chair Martin was a previous chair. Speaker Nakamura was the previous chair. Representative Hashimoto, now Senator Hashimoto, was also the previous chair of the working group. And also want to thank the members of the public for their continued engagement as part of this process here. So that's it. We'll proceed with the presentation. I'll hand it over to DHL.
Thank you. Representative Edslin, Keela, Martin, and Poipoi. We appreciate this opportunity to provide you not only with an update on what we've been doing, but in response to your appropriate scrutiny of what we've been doing with Act 279. We have a lot to present, and I think rather than going through this 44-page hard copy, which goes into detail, which we'll be giving to you if we haven't already, we'd like to highlight parts of it so that we don't use up all the time just in presenting, and we would like to leave some opportunity for you to ask questions. First, I'd like to introduce Kalani Franda, who's heading up our development of the 28 projects that we have going. As part of the agenda, not only will he go over the use of the Act 279 monies, but also, I guess, the funding that we're looking to try and address phase 2 of the projects relative to the 28 projects. We'd also like to get into explaining some of the innovative approaches we're using. Then lastly, talk about some of the legislation that we would have you folks consider in assisting us in moving this program forward. So with that, I turn it over to Kalani.
Aloha, members of the working group. So the booklet you have in front of you provides a clear, organized update on how DHL is progressing with Act 279. It builds upon the original implementation plan that the department had submitted in response to the legislature's directive on how the $600 million would be utilized. What you see today is an updated version reflecting the recommendations made by the Commission's Act 279 Permitted Interaction Group and formally adopted by the Hawaiian Homes Commission in February 2024. Importantly, the booklet includes a transparent accounting of encumbrances so you can clearly see where the funds have been committed, how they support each project, and the progress being made across the implementation plan. The intent is to offer direct, data-driven, and honest snapshot of where funds are allocated and the measurable progress that is underway on every item. And let me just start off, before we move into the data and policy considerations, I'd like to begin with something that grounds us in the purpose of this work. We'll start with a short video of the Puhona Blessing. This project reflects more than construction. It demonstrates community, collaboration, and the movement made possible through Act 279.
Sorry, briefly, we have Representative Garcia who's joined us also.
Thank you, Chair. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this beautiful day that we have here on the island of Maui. We thank you for all of the families that have been blessed by this great opportunity to be connected with the Aina once again.
In the past 2 years, we've moved to 4 different zip codes. In 2 days, our new zip code, for the Lord's sake, will be forever 96793, and we feel so blessed about what's happening to us and what's going on with the Department of Hawaiian Homeland.
Pu'uhona carries a name that reminds us of steadfastness and perseverance. That is exactly what our homesteaders have shown. Years of patience, hope, and determination. Today, that perseverance is rewarded with the keys to your new home.
The peace now that we have actually being in our home is absolutely overwhelming. And we're just so blessed, and thank you, Jesus, for this wonderful opportunity and for our new home. We're happy to be here.
Pu'uhona is more than homes. It's building a community. It's building a strong community. And it's helping us go back to our roots. Mahalo for your resilience. Mahalo for your patience. But welcome home. Welcome home, Auntie. Welcome home, Paco.
I like being home. And it's so many years since I left. At nights, I used to have memories of just coming home. And basically, I was thinking about Kahului, where I was born.
At the end of the day, it's about people. It's putting people into homes, making them a part of the community, and making sure that it's for generations to come, right? For many of these families, they'll pass it on, and this will be the home base for many great events, many great milestones in their life. And that's what it's all about. It's making sure that we can make that happen for many beneficiaries.
We're blessed to work with these wonderful people, and they're dedicated, and they want to solve the problem, and they want to get Hawaiians back on their land. And when we do these projects, it doesn't just help the beneficiaries, but those beneficiaries and having these houses, that opens up other housing for non-Hawaiians. So these projects benefit the whole community, not just the beneficiaries.
The location is perfect. It's central to everything. My son is in a great school. He just started kindergarten. He's so happy to be in his new school. So we're very, very blessed, and we're very fortunate to be here.
This blessing ceremony is not only about asking for guidance and protection over these houses, but also recognizing the kuleana that comes with homesteading. Together as a community, you will nurture this aina, uplift one another, and create a foundation for generations to come.
93 years young, she's been waiting 38 years for this opportunity, so welcome home. Today we have Director Cully Watson with the keys to your hale.
Very happy to partake in this, celebration, but also for the work-wise, you can see, right? Auntie Helen came home. She's 93 years old, got to move back from the continent into her new home today, and she blessed us with allowing her to be on her property today, celebrating in this momentous occasion.
I just want to tell the people of Maui, I'm so happy to be home.
So the next several slides will provide a summary of what's included in the booklet. Rather than walking through each page, I'll highlight the areas of progress, policy considerations, and implementation milestones, so the committee has a clear understanding of the work that's underway. We have in here three beneficiary testimonies highlighted by Sheldian Dudawa, Tina Laikaha, and Auntie Esther. Their stories show the progress our families are experiencing today, keys being handed over, new communities forming, and long-awaited opportunities being realized. These voices remind us why Act 279 matters and who it is ultimately that we're serving. The themes reflected in this booklet. The remaining sections of the booklet outline the major themes. So one is innovation in funding, construction methods, land exchanges, technology, encumbrances, and expenditure progress, including county, federal, and LIHTC partnerships. And then new acreage acquired, and the number of lots developed across each island. And the three key policy considerations that may require future collaboration with this committee. In there, and it was in the plan that was submitted initially, was talking about home ownership versus rental activities, the level of support needed for beneficiaries pursuing home ownership, and prioritization of homestead development statewide. So these themes provide context for the decisions, timelines, and partnerships shaping implementation efforts. You know, we really are doing things different. And we've gone through kind of the tail end of how we used to do it before. Now we're working on issuing project leases for each of the projects that we're working on. And what this gives us is an opportunity to work and not bypass people who can't pre-qualify. It's being able to work with those that are on the wait list that are coming up. And when they decide to say, yes, we want to be a part of a project, we're issuing them project leases. This gives them a number of different things. It gives them the opportunity to pass it on to a 25% successor or 25% transfer. It also allows for us to work with them and go through financial assessments. For those that require financial literacy and preparation, we're walking with them, teaming up and partnering with service providers such as Hawaii Community Assets, LNY, and others.
Sorry,
And so,
would you mind just elaborating on what a project lease is?
sure. So a project lease is a lease that is, it's a paper lease. So it's not a lease that's tied to a particular lot. It's tied to a project. And what that gives us now is they have access to this project. First they had access being a beneficiary. Now they have access to a project. And this also allows for...
These are projects that are not yet underway.
It is part of the projects that we've identified in the booklet. So you see those. And there are also others that are coming up that we've had on the books for a while. And we would actually want to be able to provide opportunities for those, especially as we've been seeing beneficiaries dying on the wait list. So we're identifying those right now and being able to work with them. We've also directed those that we partner with to do development. So with our developers, we're saying instead of building it and trying to figure out how they pre-qualify, build it based upon what they can qualify. Totally different concept. And now it's something that, and helping them understand that this is what you can qualify for, this is what we're going to build. So you're going to see options that are coming up, opportunities and options. The options that they will provide, some of them might be able to qualify for a turnkey home. Some of them may have the financial means to be able to do owner-builder loan. As you guys know, with construction loans, you gotta come up with 20% down. Not everybody has that type of access. But in walking with our service providers, we can also find programs that provide them down payment assistance, the DPAs. Some of them might be able to qualify for self-help. And others, because of the financial means that they're in, some of the things that they've experienced during life, they may have to go with a rent with option to purchase, where they're renting, but they're issued a project lease. And so they can actually pass it on. Very different from before, but now they have access immediately to something that they can be able to occupy. The beauty of this is, and let me show you this real quick. So the next policy consideration that we have is number 3. On this, what we do is not only do we look for lands that are close to educational facilities, that are close to healthcare facilities, it's also close to existing infrastructure. So it makes building infrastructure much more easier than trying to bring in something that's not there. So we're tasked with the 600 mil that is given to us. We're tasked to build the infrastructure. The beauty of that is that it unlocks now about $2 billion worth for vertical development. So the developers are bringing in that $2 billion worth of development to be able to build the houses. So not only are we building out the infrastructure, developing the infrastructure, we're also developing the houses so we can get our beneficiaries into it.
So I have a question.
Yes.
My understanding was that the house was not part of the benefit to the house itself. Your slide suggests that the house is part of the $1 bill, not just the land.
It's for the land lease.
Okay, it says
It's
pay
just
for
for
the
the
house, land lease. Okay,
So they pay for the beneficiary will pay for the house,
Right,
and then the land lease is $1 per year.
okay.
Well, let me just add to that. It also develops on depends on the approach that is being used. If you use a low-income housing tax credit with option to purchase, both the infrastructure and the vertical construction is included in the cost. But as a tenant, during that 15-year compliance period, technically they don't own the vertical construction. They have an option to purchase it at the end of the 15-year period. That's one approach, really targeting those that are 6% MI below, that would otherwise not only not be able to qualify for turnkey mortgage, but more importantly, qualify for home ownership. So this is a way where we approach and used in addressing the majority of the people on our wait list, that approach.
And in that time frame, as they're renting, we have our developers / management company that are working with them. How do you prepare to purchase the place? And the place is, and when you take a look at buying a place 15 years later, it increases. Inflation happens. For them, they're gonna purchase a place based upon what you qualified for. So it's like you qualified within this particular AMI, that's the range that you're gonna have. So we have some cases, for example, in Kona, something that was awarded about 5 years ago, they're gonna purchase it for about $350,000 at the end of 15 years. Huge difference, huge opportunity, and they know exactly who was living there before. It was them. This next slide just shows that how we've encumbered the monies. So roughly about 511 mil went to infrastructure. About 52.8 million went towards acquisitions. Financing and beneficiary services, about 36 million. Encumbered as of 12/31, we have 588.9 million. So the idea really is for us was really to encumber everything by the 600 mil by December 31st. Unfortunately, we went through some budget and finance, has us not releasing the 11.1, but we have our contracts in place. It's ready to go. When it becomes available, we're able to encumber that right away. What happened in last year, we had about 129 million in lapse fees.
Kila has a quick clarifying question.
So wait, BNF is holding the last?
There's a release administrative process that they asked that we hold off on the 11.1 until March.
And that's the last of the?
That's the last.
And then, if I can move one more, just for the public understanding, Chair Malani.
Yes.
Can you explain the difference from encumbered and extended?
Okay. So encumbering means we actually need the monies set aside for a particular project, for a particular contract. And so that's what's encumbering it. We don't, and then once it's encumbered, we go through, we can actually spend that money that was allocated for that particular contract or project.
So the monies at this point largely have been encumbered?
Yes.
Thank you.
However, as of December 31st, we will have 120 million spent.
Thank you.
You'll also have a breakdown based upon counties on the projects, what's being encumbered for that area, totaling the 600 mil. What kind of lots, the number of lots that are being developed, and what is the anticipation of construction being completed, as well as occupancy.
Let me just add too that although the the funding might be encumbered, the actual construction process can go over 2, 3, 4 years. So the expenditures are almost like progress payments as the project moves along and is being constructed.
So in the implementation plan that was initially provided to the working group as well as legislature. It totaled about 2,722 leases. We are projecting roughly about almost 6,000, 7,000 leases based upon what was approved by the commission in 2024. We are going to be completing 2,472 lots that people will actually occupy. On the far right table that you see there, it shows the lots that will be developed by it was supposed to be 2030, or 2230, sorry, is being developed. And then the wait list, how many of the wait list is being addressed and where? So Hawaii, for example, Hawaii residential, Laiohua, 380 lots will be developed. And how many is on the waiting list? 5,900. So that goes down, it gives you a list of each of the islands, where the projects are located, what wait list is addressing, how many lots are going to be developed, and what wait list is addressing. At the very bottom, Chair had mentioned about phase 2. So given with the 20 lots that we have and the 600 million and what we've been, 20 projects, sorry, and the 600 million that's been appropriated, we still have a phase 2 in order for us to complete all of the projects 100%. And so, as I had shared with you before, it really is, we need a partner. We've been partnering with a number of different agencies, developers, etc. And I give you a quick example. One is with the County of Maui. County of Maui is doing a job in doing an affordable housing project on Lanai. As you know, Lanai doesn't have the kind of resources that all the other islands may have. And so we're partnering on shared infrastructure. We also have a GT set aside that they've put forth that we will be able to receive by 2030, roughly about 90 million. So we're using those types of monies to shared infrastructure, working along with the County of Maui, so we can build out the infrastructure not only for our 75 lots that we're building in Lanai, but also for the lots that they're building for their affordable housing project. We're also using the EP, the Emergency Proclamation, to directly contract the developer that's developing that, because it makes sense, economies of scale, etc. And we're very familiar with that particular developer that won that RFP from the County of Maui, because they won a contract in Laiohua and Kona that we've been working with them on. Phase 2, this is the lots that we need to complete. 1684 for Hawaii residential, 1514 for Maui County, for Kauai County 1,297, Oahu 1,790. And these are the new fundings that we will need. Now, if you take a look at, one thing I had mentioned before too, and that we had mentioned, was that we're actually taking yesterday's budget to do tomorrow's development. So if we have something that's consistent each year, we can plan ahead accordingly. So for example, if we had a $25 million tranche to complete phase 2, we can complete that in 20 years. However, if we have 100 million each year, we can complete all of this in 8 years. I wanted to pass this on to Chair very shortly. And so the very last line item that you see on the gold box on the very bottom is Oahu residential. We have 560 that we're building out there. And there's a large wait list, as you know. So we don't have that kind of land on Oahu. So we got to think about density, looking at TOD, looking at opportunities where we're going up and be able to address the weakness of that. And that provides us an opportunity for us to share with you new homestead options.
Yes, I guess so. It's very obvious that with our large waiting list, over 29,000, And especially with the majority of it, over 11,000 being on this island, with only 4% of our land inventory, with over 8,000 acres on this island, and not all usable, it's almost mandatory for us to look at different innovative ways to provide homesteads. So the first that we've come up with is the Bolodrome. It's a high-rise, 23-story. It's 155 million that was put together by Sanford Carr in order to build this. We also not only were able to raise the funds, but we're also kind of getting innovative in separating the financing from the land. And you folks passed some legislation the other year which allows us to separate that, whereby we can still issue a homestead lease, undivided homestead lease for the land portion, and then the individual that's participating in this program can acquire or achieve home ownership by complying with 15-year requirements regarding the tax credits and various other things that, if they choose, which is voluntary to participate in. So this particular innovative approach, not only relative to the innovative financing, was we were able to raise 155 million, but what was really key about this particular financing was the activity of the legislature. Normally, developers like myself and others out in the private sector, we go into HHFTC and we compete for financing. And then when there's a QAP where you make so many points for whatever your proposal puts together, with whether it's a reduction in the developer fee or the per unit cost, which is a lot more reasonable than, say, the others, as well as the fact that you have participants in the program where they typically are 6% AMI and below. In this particular case, the developer came to you folks, the legislature, and you were kind enough to provide him with 80 million of the private activity bonds authorization. And with that 80 million, he was able to automatically access a 4% low-income housing tax credit that are set aside by the HFTC and the feds. And so with that, he was able to not only combine that with some money from the DERF, which altogether was, rental housing revolving fund, about 41.5 million, along with 4.7 million, both state and federal. So with this, not only were we able to go up and provide home ownership in an area in urban Honolulu overlooking Diamond Head, and a really great location, which was, I think, very, very attractive. But more importantly, we were able to take people off the waiting list. So this is the first time. We anticipate doing this again. We do have several sites where we're thinking of doing high rises. And so, again, similar if as an option, if we are able to get you folks to support what we're doing, by doing a set aside on the private activity bonds, that will facilitate not only access to other fundings that we can leverage, but more importantly, use our funding in a way to provide homesteads for people off our wait list. Another innovative, as well as a unique way in which we provided housing, as well as a different option and choice, is what we did in Kapa'a, in Kauai, the Wapoli project involving 82 units, upgraded townhouses. It was an acquisition rather than building it from scratch. And so with that one, we the developer put together 44 million in funding. And that one, they got about 13.7 million in DERF. But we also leveraged the NAHAZA funding that we were getting from the feds. We took 25 million of that, and again, submitted that along with an application. And then additionally, another innovative financing approach was American Savings Bank. They stepped up and provided 19.9 million in construction financing. First time ever that in this particular scenario, we were able to combine the three funding sources in order to address and acquire and not only renovate, but provide housing for our beneficiaries. That one was also somewhat unique in that we have a rent with option of purchase. And the people that we're targeting are those at 30% to 120% AMI. So there's a cross section rather than the typical. And in this case, no light tech was used. So again, we're looking at different innovative approaches. But the other thing that we're also looking at is land acquisitions. So part of the Act 279, we're acquiring lands that are in better locations, more desirable, less costly to develop. And so with that, we've acquired lands not only in Hawaii Kai, but also in Lehui and Kauai, and various other areas that we're looking at. Besides the acquisition by purchase, we also have developers that are now working with us and actually donating that to the department in order to satisfy their entitlements. So with that particular approach, not only does the department and more importantly our beneficiaries become, I guess, tenants as well as homeowners in a nicely developed homesteading area that involves other than Native Hawaiians, others. And so there's also amenities, hospitals, and other things that make that particular site very desirable. Now, I'd also have to acknowledge and thank not only some of the different counties that have stepped up in order to assist us. The city and county of Honolulu, they've looking to transfer some property in Kala Hill along with $20 million in CIP funding for infrastructure. We also have Maui County that's set aside a percentage of their GET set aside, totaling about 80-90 million by 2030. So it's a situation where not only do we are starting to get partners to assist in this program, but more importantly, we're starting to chip away at that wait list. But still, even with all of that, without a doubt, we need to continue these innovative approaches. We need to look at better ways to leverage the funding that you folks might provide us, as well as authorization on your part regarding bonding and some other sources. With that, I'd like to, at this point, call Oi Liao. Excuse me.
Yeah. When you said Kalaheo, do you mean Kalaheo Kausai in Kainoa?
Yes, Kainoa.
And so is that moving forward? I know that you were doing assessment of the land.
Yeah, we're still in
You're
assessment.
still in that phase.
We're going to make sure that not only would the infrastructure costs be not prohibitive, but also, I want to make sure that we can build something that our beneficiaries would, as their homes would be safe and not subject to a lot of the problems that the surrounding homeowners are experiencing. Clearly we're not going to put any of our beneficiaries in that predicament. So this is Ari, and she has some words of wisdom for you legislators and how we're going to improve the program more.
Ano ai me ke aloha ia o ko o Ariana Leo ko I Nuana has the Government Relations Program Specialist for the department, and today we'll be going over legislative proposals that were approved by the Hawaiian Homes Commission and also support the initiatives and projects of Act 279. So first, we have Heluikahi relating to housing. This proposal exempts any development of homestead lots or housing by the department from general excise and use taxes. The savings resulting from the exemption from GET taxes that DHL can potentially accrue from this exemption can be applied to the development of additional housing and associated infrastructure. Next, we have Helu Ekoi, relating to historic preservation reviews. This proposal allows the Department of Hawaiian Homelands to assume review of the effect of any project for lands under our jurisdiction, except for projects affecting properties listed or nominated for inclusion in the Hawaii Register of Historic Places or the National Register of Historic Places. The passage of this legislative proposal will allow for efficiency in process and timeline to meet expected outcomes in a timely manner through the ability to expedite the construction of proposed projects. The estimated maximum total time it currently takes SHPD of the LNR to review these projects is approximately 165 days, but we recognize the pressing timeline of Act 279 as well as the urgency to serve the beneficiaries on the waiting list. Next, we have Helu Iwalu relating to the Hawaiian Homes Commission Act, more specifically the loan guarantee increase. This proposal increases the limit of the state's liability for monies borrowed by the department were loans made to lessees to be guaranteed by the department from 100 million to a greater amount. This will help Point Homeland lessees afford the home prices being offered through the department's turnkey offerings and the cost for vacant lot home builds. So as many of you may be aware, the department offers direct loans for beneficiaries, and by amending Section 214 of the Hawaiian Homes Commission Act, it will allow for the department to have a greater capacity to serve beneficiaries through loans. Next, we have Kumukolu relating to the rental housing revolving fund. This proposal permits the rental housing revolving fund to be used to provide loans or grants to buyers with incomes above 60 and at or below 140% of the median family income for the state to purchase a rental unit. This proposal will allow DHHL beneficiaries to have access to low interest loans for projects developed with rental housing revolving fund. Last but not least, we have HB 576. So this was actually legislation that was introduced last year by HHFDC, and the department was, of course, in support. It relates to restrictions on the transfer of real property under Chapter 201H Hawaii Revised Statutes. It exempts transfers of Hawaiian homelands of the Department of Hawaiian Homelands from transfer restrictions that are pursuant to HHFDC. So some of these transfer restrictions refer to buyback and shared appreciation of restrictions. However, pursuant to the Hawaiian Homes Commission Act, we have separate and different provisions. And this bill, which was supported by both the department and HHFDC, will allow us to be exempt from those transfer restrictions. So, with that being said, that's most of the legislation that is supportive of Act 279, but we always remain open to ideas and initiatives from you all in support of completing all of these projects. Mahalo.
Do you have any questions?
So let's maybe start with questions just on the proposed legislation, what we have here, and then we can open it up to questions on the legislation.
I do have a question on the first one, or I don't know if it was the first one, the tax exemption. What does that mean? Does that mean every bit of construction material that goes into that project? I mean, where does that include?
This legislative proposal applies to all housing and homestead development by the department. Our estimates on an annual basis for the department in whole would be about 1.5 million per year. When we did a rough estimate for just Act 279 projects, the estimate was about 24 million. And with that 24 million, we could provide more housing or repair and maintenance needs for existing homesteads for their long-term use.
Okay, but how would it actually work? Like, would we reimburse the department for the GET
No,
they
there's no
spent?
reimbursement.
Or would it be that when you go to purchase supplies, would you somehow, show them that you're exempt and you don't have to pay it at that moment? Or how would it actually work?
Yeah, normally a GET exemption is a form you got to submit to get approved, and you identify, okay, this is a contract or subcontractor that did the work, this is the cost of the material, and then with the including the services, and this with the GET that's being asked to be waived, it's quantified, and then there's an approval. So there's a vetting as well as a review, all claims for the waiver of that GET, and then that's approved, and then it's processed. So there's no payment of that GET or a reimbursement. There's just no payment.
So if you go to Harbor, Hawaii, or somewhere, anywhere
Right.
to buy your supplies, you just show them you're exempt from GET, and you just
Yeah,
get that
usually,
money and pay for it.
It's usually between the developer or the contractor, so they would inform the suppliers, okay, we're exempt. Even on the consultant services, there's an exemption of that. So they show their services, and then normally on the bottom there's a GET. Okay, we gotta pay that, so asking you to pay us that, which they then use to pay for those taxes. In my view is that why tax our beneficiaries for something that comes to the state when the state is obligated to build these facilities for them. So that seems very unfair and doesn't make sense. So that's why we're asking for a waiver of that tax charge.
Pursuant to the governor's emergency proclamation, as Kalani mentioned, we've been taking advantage of the exemptions that we've been afforded thus far, and we'd like to make this a stable form for us going forward through legislation.
Yeah, even the governor recognizes the value, because on the back end, the cost of the house, if you reduce it by 40% or whatever, that's, for some of our beneficiaries, that is major.
Further questions on that section?
On one of your recommendations, it was about the loan cap. So right now it's at what, 100 million?
Yes.
Okay, see, so that would change to an unspecified amount, or
500.
500 million, okay. And on an annual basis, how much loans does the department provide to homesteaders? And are these loans for home improvements or for stuff like that, or what are the loans primarily used for?
It's kind of sad really, when you look at how many direct loans have been issued by the department. And partly the reason for that, especially on a new project, is that in order to qualify for a direct loan from the department, you need to be a lessee. If you're on the waiting list, technically, you're not a lessee. So we've changed that by issuing these paper leases, so that now not only do they have something in hand that they can pass on to the heir should they die prior to the house being built, but more importantly, we can now access some of these direct loans that we have. We have about 40 million in funding that we combo, use it for collateral, but also if we can use some direct loans to our beneficiary. Because we have assortment of different types of loans, 184, 247, all kind of, and these is another product or loan product.
Any mortgage loans or?
Mortgage loans.
Mortgage loans.
Yeah.
We previously increased the amount through the White Homes Commission Act, Section 2 and 4, from 50 million to 100 million through legislation. Now that we've been blessed with more funding to be able to serve our beneficiaries, we're hoping to increase the amount to have greater capacity to serve them. Also, in our studies, when we increased the amount from 50 million to 100 million, our delinquency rate remained low.
If there's further questions on that section before we open it up again for our presentation. Okay, members, questions in general about the presentation?
Yeah, thanks, Ori, Kalani, and Chair. So, okay, just to clarify at this point, the department, what is this, since 2020? So prior to 2022, you folks were sitting on a couple hundred unexpended project leases.
120 million.
And then now we're sitting at maybe 3,000 project leases issued. And then in the pipeline, how much more PLs you think will be?
We will get up to about 7,000 by December 2026.
And that's identifying with Act 279 or post?
Additional.
Okay. So when we're talking about the project leases and that approach, you folks have identified the cost for all those projects and project leases.
Sorry, repeat that.
We've identified the cost for all the project lease projects.
That
potential cost.
Yeah.
No.
We got so many areas that we're looking at. So we're doing our due diligence, even in the Color Hill. We don't know until we find out, well, is there adobe soil that has to be, is there some kind of drainage system we got installed above this development we're doing. So the actual cost is uncertain on some of the newer projects. Some of the older projects, yeah, we can be very detailed. For example, in Lealie, it's costing us about $376,000 in infrastructure costs per lot. That's the most expensive infrastructure costs per lot because of the Blue Rock and various other challenges that we're having to deal with. Whereas other areas, we can get it down to maybe 150, 100, or 200,000 per lot. So it really, and that's just the infrastructure. And you got the vertical construction, which is going up, unfortunately, because of the cost of materials, tariffs, lack of sufficient labor, especially on the outer island, permitting. Those are areas that we're trying to address with different innovative approaches that we could get into.
And if we can just clarify, because I think I never want to assume that people watching or know, when we're saying infrastructure per lot, that's water, sewer, electricity, roads.
If I could also add to that, and that is, you had asked, what about these other projects? So the other projects that are on top of the 28 projects that are identified in Act 279, you don't see the budget in the phase 2, because the phase 2 is more to complete the Act 279 projects. But the other areas that we're identifying, such as HANA, we've identified how many lots that we can actually issue on. There's still a process that we gotta go through. We're doing some of the due diligence, but we have an estimated budget of what it could come out for infrastructure.
I have a couple more.
Yeah, well,
Okay, when we are looking at all the DHHL projects, so Act 14, right, this one you folks identified in here, is that a partnership with folks like DLNR who could potentially?
No, there's no partnership with DLNR. We're trying to get more land from them, that's the only, I don't know if you'd call it a partnership. I take that back. Or, under Act 14, we're short about 552 acres. We've identified parcels. We're working with DLNR, not only under Act 14, which is over 20 years old, that's 16,580 acres that will be transferred to the department to make it whole. So we're at the tail end, hopefully before the end of the year we'll finish that. Most of the parcels have come from DLNR, but this time around we're looking at DOA, HSFTC, ACDA, as well as DLNR. So we hope to finish that off prior to the end of the year. I must say that DLNR has been very, very responsive and helpful in trying to address that.
Because I know, right, that DLNR has amazing land that could be far beneficiaries to issue pastoral and ag land awards, right? So when we're doing to make the trust whole, are some of those agencies, could that also be DOE, could that be UH, or are they considered in that same scope of land to justify?
We've had some preliminary discussions with them. You know, like in Kapolei, there's some great lands right adjacent to our kind of healing project that the West Hawaii has identified for rentals. I'd rather see, rather than rentals, homesteaders, right adjacent where we have 4 different homestead communities, so as well as a TOD station. There's a couple parcels there we're going to go up, as well as mixed use. So there's a variety, and going to be a significant number of homesteaders there. And so part of it is, you know, we want to expand and use lands that are adjoining. Like I said, we have over 11,000 on our wait list. And to be quite frank, Kapolei seems to be the best area right now and most viable for us.
So question about the project leases. So, for example, the project in Moi'ili'ili, the old Bolodrome, when the residents move in, they're renters. Is this project doing the rent with option to purchase as well, or it's just straight up rent?
Yeah, this one, you know, one of the challenges when you do a conversion is the lenders. In this case, our biggest, I wouldn't call it an obstacle, it's more an educational process, is with HUD. Because they're providing a loan that, you know, needs to, when you look at it, it has to be paid off or whatever, or if we can continue it on, similar to the legislation we're doing with the HHFD, Rental Housing Revolving Fund. Rather than having the homesteader go out and get a new loan, we can just continue that on. But in the HUD situation, in the Moi'ili'ili, it's a little different because it also has tax credits involved as well as bonds. So that was a little bit more challenging, and the project will be done in about a year. So we're in the process of discussing with the not only the LIHTC funders, but also the HUD to make sure that they're okay, which I think they should be. Because really what we're talking about is a homestead lease that we hope to issue up front rather than having them comply with 15 years. And if they don't make it to the 15 years, they lose everything. So that's why we did the separation of the land and issuing a homestead lease for the land versus a vertical construction, which is financed in a different way. So that we gotta, you know, we still got, and our homesteaders still have to comply with those requirements under that funding or financing approach. But if with the okay of the lenders and the financiers, that we issue a homestead lease for the land portion, undivided, we should be good. And more importantly, we'll give our beneficiaries something that they have, rather than just a renter. When you pass away, you got nothing to pass on to your kids.
So the residents moving in, will they be removed from the wait list?
Well, we hope to, and that's why we're making the changes. Right now, we're in discussions. We hope to complete the discussions and get an agreement within 6 months.
Because I guess the common public concern that I get from emails and phone calls and stuff is that in the rental projects, we're building rentals, but they won't be removed from the wait list until they purchase the rental at the end of 15 years. So are we using funds from the law to build rentals which will not remove people from the wait list?
Yeah, and again, last year, you guys passed a law that allowed us to separate the land from the vertical construction to allow us to issue OCDs for the land portion. We did that specifically to address the problem you're talking about, where you're a renter, you gotta wait 15 years before the conversion, like our whole Lima Lima project, which we did the conversion, but those guys were at risk. And fortunately, nobody passed away of the 72 involved in that. But when you're dealing with the majority of our beneficiaries are elderly, you gotta kind of look out for the worst and try to address the problem up front. So the idea on that one is to issue a homestead lease at the beginning of the 15-year period, and that's what we intend to do.
Okay.
I don't anticipate a problem in that, when you, and both are tied together, just like our Waipuli, there's a rental contract, a purchase agreement, there's also a deal with the developer regarding the transition from, in that case, a 10-year buyback transition period. Actually, 11-year. But in that one, again, it's a matter of getting them a lease up front.
Sure. Well, once they receive that project lease, they're off the wait list.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we have a project in Layupu. We're going through the process now because of the new law and putting together and drafting of those leases. So those renters will get a project lease or homestead lease for the area that they're living in. And so that way, if anything happens to them, they can actually pass it on to a successor that's 25%.
Well, quick follow-up to that. So, how does that work for a light tech project?
The LIHTC project?
Yeah.
Same way.
But so you can have a 15-year rent to own on a light tech
Well,
project?
it's not a rental, it's a rent with option to purchase.
Okay.
Yeah. And they still gotta comply with the 15-year period,
Yeah.
but they get a lease for the land portion up front.
And then after 15 years, they don't.
They convert it, yeah.
Um,
There's a collapse, and we're doing a CPR with this separation of the vertical from the land. And at the end of the period, that CPR collapses into one. And then they also identify the lot. And there's an attachment to the lease, homestead lease, and now, at the end of the 15-year period, identifies a specific house, or in this case, like Waipuli, the particular unit.
So, because typically what we see with light tech projects is the 60-year affordability period, rental affordability, and then conversion after 60 years. So is that with?
That's replaced with the homestead lease.
Yeah.
99 was another option for another 100 years.
I know, so I'm just wondering with light tech, so there's no issues with what I'm hearing on a 15-year conversion essentially for these light tech projects. And
We've done it.
are they getting locked in based on their AMI in the beginning of the 15-year periods? And then if the beneficiary passes away, what you're saying within that 15-year period, their
Their steps into the issue.
Before the.
There's also a qualification process. The heir needs to be needs to qualify.
Within the AMI rent.
Right.
And under 60% AMI.
Whatever they had qualified for based upon that unit.
And depending on the project, Waipuli one, it goes up to 120% AMI.
But so for the light tech project specifically though.
Yeah. Then even the Haza goes up to 80% AMI. So we got a variety, and like obviously we have a variety of people on our wait list. So we try to address all the different people on the wait list based on their income. And that's why what's the nice thing about the project leases is that we issue them out before we even do an assessment of the recipients, just based on the wait list, just based on they want this particular project. After we finish issuing out all the project leases, then we do an assessment of all the awardees. Okay, what's your income? Is it just you or is there 4 kids or whatever? And then we try to target and we require the developer to take that into account when they do their capital stack, as well as how they lay out where the different types of participants and categories are involved. Because you have the LIHTC group, and that is kind of a specific number of lots. Like for example, on the Kapolei project, Hulu'ukahai, we have about 700 awardees, and we've given out turnkey types approach in the first phase. In the second phase, we require the developer, and we've done the project lease awards. Now we're working with Helen Y and her group to do an assessment of all the different recipients, the remaining ones. And then they use that, the developer uses that info to figure out, well, I got 200 people of 6% AMI and less. So they need to then go in with an application, assuming they're going after LIHTC by February of next year. So there's certain things that need to be done. So that's why Gentry, who's the developer, is working with MDI, who's familiar with LIHTC. So that combo, as well as a requirement, we're imposing on the developers, okay, these 200, the only way they're going to get home ownership is you do a LIHTC, and that's what they're going to do.
And the Bolodrome project, is that 100% LIHTC?
No, that's 4%. Well, it's a combo. The Bolodrome is a little bit of a different animal in that, there's more than the 60% in AMI. They go to higher than that. So some of them on the transition at the end of the 15-year period may need to just get straight up, or they all got to get loans. But we're not limited to 60% AMI on that one.
And I guess what I'm getting at with that, so if you have, say, an heir to a beneficiary who the beneficiary qualified under 60% AMI for one of the LIHTC units in the Bolodrome project, and they pass away, but the heir makes more than 60% and doesn't qualify for a LIHTC unit, is there the possibility of them, instead of not having any unit available for that heir, they could get one of the other non-LIHTC units in that project? Or
well, if they're overqualified, we're looking at trying to compensate the heir in some way regarding possibly giving them a different unit or a different place in the homestead projects all these different projects we have. We take a look at that. But there's also, you can work with those individuals, in order to qualify them. So.
And then for the non-LIHTC rent with the option of purchase projects, so that purchase price is locked in from day one of the 15-year period?
Well, it's I wouldn't say locked in. There's a range because it depends on the interest interest on the debt. It may go up or down. So the net debt that's left, may be more or less. So you adjust your sales price to the remaining debt, along with the outstanding taxes, along with the conveyance fees, and then that you do the calculation and come up with the purchase prices.
Are those all based on income also, or is it just the LIHTC units that you're basing?
Well, the income would go more to the debt and their ability to qualify for the takeout loan. That's more, the nice thing about these types of projects, the units are made available to people in different AMIs, so it's not all one. So the lower income, the 30%, they get units that the rent is significantly lower than somebody that's 120% AMI. So their 30% guys are more comfortable, not only comfortable, but are able to pay the rent because the rents are based on HUD guidelines that are, laid out and issued every year. And so there's an adjustment, you go up, you go down, but it's reflective of the economy at that time. Now, let me also say that for those, other than the 80% Nahaza participants, if that individual should increase his income, it does not disqualify them from staying in the unit. The qualification is the initial assessment, then they get in the unit. So if you should do better, get a better job and all that, there's no disqualification.
And then one more question along those lines. So for, say, like Obi project, which is not a lighting project, right? Those units would be the equivalent of a project lease also?
Yeah, it's a project lease, but now it is a little different because you have all these common areas because it's townhouses. So the homestead lease is not just, you know, under the unit, they're all common areas also. So they're gonna lease, a homestead lease with that area also.
Okay, and they're all project leases, so every person moving into one of those units in a project lease,
Right.
they pass on this.
Right.
And then, sorry, and then if they opt not to purchase at the end of that 15-year period, they go back on the wait list, or?
Well, that one isn't a 15-year, it's a 11-year. At the end of the 10-year rental, they have a year to do the conversion and you know, get their finance and all that in place, so that there's a smooth transition to the home ownership, and they have a loan in place.
And if they determine, you know, the family situation changes, their income situation changes, and they want, you know, say without a home somewhere, and they opt then not to purchase and go back on the wait list for someone else?
You know, that would be very unlikely because of the, I guess, equity as well as the value that they would be giving, and they would have to give up to do what you're saying. That I think would be foolish, so we would probably talk them out of that, giving it up. And then they could maybe convey it to another family member or something like that. But we'd work with them, but we definitely don't want them to lose all that equity, huge amount of equity.
Okay.
So on the projects like this, my understanding is that couple A, you had planned something with townhomes and the
Yeah.
beneficiaries rejected it, wanting single-family homes. Did I misremember that?
Well, we did a survey back in 2020 that, you know, kind of laid out what would you like, and clearly the majority wanted the single-family residential. Now, I think that
Okay, so sorry, just as a follow-up to that then, what has the response been with projects like the Velodrome? Have there been a lot of beneficiaries very interested in that, or are they saying no, I want to wait for that single-family home?
you know, we haven't done the marketing yet. We'll probably start in about 6 months. But I also want to, when we market it, hopefully by that time we'll be able to say, you know, there's also this pathway to home ownership too, that you'd be participating in and just being a renter. We don't want to be giving these beautiful condos to individuals that are just rental. When they pass away, they have nothing to pass on to their family. So the idea is all 278 units will be able to be passed on to their beneficiary. So we're working on that.
So Representative Martin, we had it, Waipoli is an area where it is townhouses. And so we had multifamily. And so we did have conversations with those that attended. And many of them, because of their age, is looking forward to a property like that. And so you have over half of the beneficiaries are actually kupuna age. And so some of them, you know, they want to pass it on, their single family home to a granddaughter and whatnot. Some of them that want to live in it, they appreciate places like this.
Good for them.
And let me also say that in making these project lease awards, we've been very, very responsive, as well as have worked with the people coming off the wait list. That, you know, in a lot of instances, especially if they're elderly, they may have already a house. So you want to give it to the kid, it might be just 25%. So we might have a simultaneously award and transfer. They can give it to the 25%.
I have a question on the Kapea project in Kapolei. So 60 homes are being planned to build there. On the infrastructure, I guess, expense, do you folks still intend to build a stoplight on Kapolei Parkway adjacent to that Kapea project? Because what I heard from HHFTC is that DHHL was planning to put in that stoplight with the construction of the 60 homes. That's still.
We would have to get back to you.
Okay.
I would say we'd want to put a stoplight there.
Yeah, because I mean, either a stoplight or a crosswalk. There used to be a crosswalk. It was removed during the resurfacing of Kapolei Parkway, but they said no crosswalk because you folks plan to build the stoplight there. So
let me just
okay.
We'll double check.
Thank you.
Wait, on that, Question, is it the department's responsibility or is it DTS's responsibility? Is Parkway DOT or DTS?
It's
We pay for that.
Yeah.
You
Fortunately.
So there are
Well,
off-site
that's what they told us.
development requirements that we have been tasked to do, and sometimes it is a stoplight. However, we do turn over eventually, once we complete that off-site development, turn over the management with an agreement to DTS. They manage it thereafter on the new developments.
Thank you. Chair, okay, if you folks can clarify this one for me, because I often feel like as we've talked about Act 279, one of the larger misconceptions is that DHHL is exempt from all of these things, which may or may not be true. But DHHL, as we issue all of these projects, are still subject to, correct me, right, prevailing wage, same laws, we use the same kind of workforce, we're not skirting the workforce. Like, I think there's like this perception that we're gonna bring in like these workers to help lower the cost, but on all of our projects, right, for the department, we use state workforce.
Yes.
In the same way they can cost us.
Right. We've signed or the state has signed an agreement.
Prevailing wage agreements with, okay. Because I think as we've like discussed a lot of these things, like, I know the public has found frustration with the cost, but I think for me and I think many others is, I think when we look at the frustration, it's rooted in time, right? Because $650 million 2 decades ago, we probably could have expended the wait list, but that's not the hand we were dealt, right? So this is where we're at today. Could you folks clarify for us, when you're looking at all the holdups that you folks are experiencing, is that internally a holdup, or would you say the holdup happens with our county partners?
Well, the permitting has been a challenge.
And that is at what level? Internally or the county?
Well, we're starting to work with the different, at the county level, Department of Planning and Permitting. So we've had discussions, we're looking at ways to expedite. We're trying to do templates, pre-approved, different housing models, so that the developer will use that, and they can expedite the process. We're also looking at doing some of the permitting in-house. We did that on our transitional homeless shelter in Kalailoa, where we're doing a 20-unit shelter conversion for people on our wait list. So down we did our own permits, as well as issued a certificate of occupancy. So that's something I would prefer not to, because I like to have the inspectors that are more familiar with the ordinances and requirements to actually do that. But we also in-house and bringing on, or brought on somebody that can also do that for us. So yeah, the delays, I wouldn't say, it's humble. I'm not gonna say the department is, really cranking it out and doing everything right. We do need more staff. That's obvious as we starting to do all these different projects. But the reality is it's a collective process. We cannot just do it independently, whether it's actual construction. We've got to rely on developers. There's approvals of some of the infrastructure, the water supply, sewer system. That doesn't happen overnight. There's also limitations in some of the utilities that we've got to work, and we are working with the counties on some stuff, including the water supply here. So it's very challenging.
Because I think for when I worked and reviewed projects with you folks, I just think the larger thing is that I know we want to create the partnerships with the county, but I think at the state level we've identified at times the county has been the barrier to fulfilling the mandate, not just at DHHL and agencies like HST. So at what point do we want to be good neighbors, but at the point of fulfilling the mandate, use the hammer that has been afforded to the department in some cases, right? Because I think this concept that you folks aren't building things to permit or to code is not fair nor true.
No, that's kind of a last resort, but for the smaller projects, we are doing it that way. Because homeless shelter, we're trying to deal with the homeless, so we need to crank it up. But I wouldn't say that, maybe historically that's been a real problem, but I think we're developing good working relationships with the different counties. And so I look forward to that. We're working combined with infrastructure, like Lonnie mentioned the Lanai project. That's a county project that has been issued and a developer has been chosen. So we're working with the developer to combine the two. 75 units we're gonna do is in addition to what the county is doing. And that also is being in part financed by part of the GET revenues that were set aside by the Maui County. So it's a great, and I look forward to working with the different counties.
Okay, on that discussion of the counties, are there other counties that have explored that partnership of deeding
We're working with
revenue?
all.
So are there
Hawaii
any
County,
pathways right now that you see on Oahu, Hawaii Island, and Kauai County to do something similar?
On Kauai, we actually, the Waipoli project was originally a county had the option to purchase, and 3 of the mayors went through and were able to put the financing together. We were able to do it. So we closed on that $45 million project just recently. So now it's moving forward. But the county and the mayor in that instance was very supportive. They couldn't do it, so they stepped on the side and did us.
So at Hawaii County, there's a revolving fund that they have. We've been in discussion with them on how do we address it going towards the beneficiaries for down payment assistance, for renovation of houses, etc. Working along with some of our partners to be able to provide the administration on that. We've also talked with a number of different counties on land exchanges that make sense for both of us. Some of them, in a case, might make sense for them to do a regional park. For us, it makes sense for us to utilize an area that's more efficient and more suitable for us to do homestead housing. So it's those kind of discussions that we've been having that's been very beneficial for the department.
And then I was wondering, have the tariffs instituted affected any of the projects that you folks have going on?
I would think so.
But we can't quantify it yet.
Yeah, can't quantify it.
Okay. And then, on what you folks just mentioned with, as we were talking about the different counties, so when LUC does regional plans, right, and approves how much acreage or units in one area, if the department was to go into a project and handle the entitlement for a parcel, are you folks still technically subject to the LUC requirement?
No.
You folks are exempt.
Yeah.
So an entitlement for a parcel that caps a project at, say, 500, if the department went in there, took the entitlement and built houses, your allocation wouldn't affect the LUC.
Well, we wouldn't totally ignore it, Representative Kila. No, there's obviously some kind of logic to that 500, so we would take that into consideration. We try to be good, neighbors, so to speak, and just like Kaleo, we could have put a high-rise over there, but obviously we're not. Even Hawaii Kai, we could, build another high-rise. But we're putting townhouses as well as single residential units of a comparable size as the neighborhood. And so, our approach has been to be good neighbors, to fit into the community. It's almost like an infill project versus something to stand out and create a lot of objections. And possible litigation, that's one thing that me as a developer, it's the worst thing you can get is litigation. So we try to do everything right, but at the same time, we're not flaunting it, we're doing it in a way that fits into the community.
Because I think largely to your point, Chair, is like, and I think I'm sure Rep. Garcia appreciates one day having the largest homestead community, but when we look at it, what?
7 years away?
Oh, I was like 7 years ago. I think pride to say that we have that for now until Kapolei is fully built out, but I think our beneficiaries deserve access to places in downtown Honolulu, beautiful parcels in Kailua, and if that is partnering with the future projects that exist in these areas to find a way, if those entitlements can be satisfied with the department, I would fully support us moving that way forward. So every community can acknowledge not just homesteaders in Waianae, Nanapuli, Kapolei, we put them everywhere.
That's our plan. Everywhere. Nice area.
And a good example is in Bergen, right? Right in the center of town, agricultural land. Many thousand homes. Quick question, have you guys utilized DERF for infrastructure? If not, why not?
Well, the Waipoli project, we're using DERF in order to finance primarily the construction. In that case, it was more construction rather than acquisition or infrastructure. And that one is a renovation project. So it's not for infrastructure, it's more for improving the vertical construction.
I was surprised, I guess expected, but surprised to see that construction costs have doubled since 2019, as you guys put in your pamphlet here. And it's, you mentioned if you had a dedicated funding source, I think, Connie, you said $100 million per year that you could, award all the project pieces within 8 years.
Yes.
If you folks had a dedicated funding source, would that enable you to utilize work DERF on a large scale for infrastructure, essentially lock in those costs early on with the interest rate and pay it down with that dedicated funding over time?
Well, DERF is, it's typically and historically, they're not large loans, usually about 10 million, so it's not a real major source of infrastructure funding. So looking at maybe some bond sales to get into the infrastructure financing. I think that one is 512, 513, like they use at the university, looking at using that, looking at working with OHA. They have a funding source. They want to partner with us on some stuff, so I'm saying, well, use your bond authorization. So we're trying to get them to use their bonds. We have about 80 million in bonds that we're looking to recycle and use it in some of these new projects for phase 2. So there's a variety of approaches. Granted, we like the lump sums you guys give us, but the reality is, especially this year, is we need to get a little bit more creative.
And does all of that rely on a dedicated funding source?
Dedicated funding source?
If you guys had, if you guys are floating a bond for those projects specifically, and you're using the revenue from the project to pay it off, or can you use, an annual, if you had a dedicated funding source?
That will help.
That will help, definitely. We can, we can leverage that and, borrow a lot more money and the lenders, bond issuers, look at that and say, okay, well, you feel comfortable in not only grading you at a double A or whatever, going after funds, as well as recycling. We're also looking at some of the existing bonds out there, whether it's the county or HST, to recycle those. But that's all in the timing of the use of those funds. So we're looking at some of our phase 2s, maybe we can time it where they can use the recycled bonds.
Members, further questions? Rep. Keel's question was, is this our last 279 briefing? And I think it's probably, right, we have a interim report, which we're going to do before the start of this session, and then a final report before the start of the 2027 session. So we might do maybe one final one next summer, depending on if things change on your folks' front, where these allocations are going. But tentatively, this might be our last action submittal.
We're available anytime. Look forward to working with you.
Yes, Rep. Keel has a closing thought for us here.
Well, I just want to thank Chair Eslin and the work of the committee to see this through. We were elected post 279, the year after it was allocated and put forth, and I am fully aware of the challenges that the department faces, but I think all of us in this room can agree there is no greater mandate than fulfilling the one that enshrined in the Constitution, which has made the Department of my homelands. And you folks are subject to the hand of what is known as the legislature. And as I said prior, I wish that these monies came 20 years sooner, because the cost end would have been much lower. We could have addressed so many things, but that's not the reality we live in now. So as we head into the session and what is to come, I would like to say, I can tell you that I speak for myself, and I'm sure they would agree, that every member on this committee wants to see a path forward to achieve something for the department, not as a handout, but as a right and entitlement. Because I say it now and I'll say it always, when we always are beneficiaries because of life, when you take a native Hawaiian off the list and you put them into a home that is keeping our workforce here, that is addressing the cost of living, and that is keeping Hawaii for Hawaii and our native Hawaiians. without our native Hawaiian community in Hawaii, there is no Hawaii. So when we look at all these creative tools in our toolbox of addressing how we keep folks here, it's in our toolbox now. That is, until Congress or someone else says otherwise, we have a legal way to, I don't want to say discriminate housing, but to house a preference group and what is oftentimes the ones that hurt the most is the Hawaiians. So Chair, I don't envy the role you're in. I know there's not a waiting list for the position as the chairman of the commission, but I'm happy to be in this time today, serving in this body with these folks and your folks' leadership. And I just want to thank you folks for oftentimes.
Thank you, appreciate it.
First further comments?
Thank you for being here and for keeping us posted and updated. I think going through this next session, I'm sure the discussion will come up again about more funding perhaps, but I think just keeping us updated on the specific $600 million and how they're being used, I think will go a long way here in the building as far as keeping our colleagues aware of all the expenses. So thank you.
Yeah, I just want to echo my colleague's sentiment here. Express my appreciation to you folks for your hard work here. You have a huge task in front of you, and I appreciate the work that you have done to spend down $600 million in what I think is, mostly wise ways. And it becomes just more and more clear with every Act 279 working group meeting we've had is the need for lots more funding for you folks to fulfill that. Seeing here 6,300 project leases awarded in 2024, and we need to see that through to ensure that those project leases, those families can end up on hand. The way that we can do that is with, hopefully dedicated funding source going forward. We can figure out a way to do that. And also create a financing mechanism, which I think you guys are figuring out. So I appreciate all the work that you're doing on that front. And as Rakila said, we talk a lot about trying to ensure that when we are building housing in Hawaii, that this is going to residents of Hawaii. And we are really constitutionally limited in ways to do that. But you guys can do it obviously better than anybody, not just residents of Hawaii, but the longest term intergenerational residents that we have in Hawaii. So I think the sentiment of the committee is clear that we have to figure out ways to ensure that you guys are funding we can make that. So we look forward to continued collaboration and we'll work with you on generating our report to the House for the evening session.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. Seeing no further business, is hearing now.